of the House. The member for McMahon has the call.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Today's Australian Financial Review reports that the Prime Minister is preparing to overrule the Treasurer in addressing the excesses in negative gearing. And I quote a Coalition MP, "Scott's definitely keeping it as a live option, but the PM has effectively made up his mind." Prime Minister, given the Treasurer has absolutely zero impact on the government's economic policy, isn't this proof that the Treasurer is one excess that the government can deal with?
The Treasurer has the call.
Mr Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister for the opportunity to respond to the question when it comes to negative gearing. When I was Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, and prior to that, Mr Speaker, I got some very good advice from General Molan.
Treasurer will resume his seat. Treasurer will resume his seat. Member for Chifley will cease interjecting. Members on my left will cease interjecting. I'm going to call the Treasurer in a second. The Treasurer can just resume his seat for a second. And I remind members of what I've said about persistent interjectors. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. General Molan gave me some very good advice. I wish those opposite had taken it. But what he said is you don't rush to failure, Mr Speaker. And that's what we've seen from those opposite when it comes to negative gearing, Mr Speaker. Because what those opposite have done, Mr Speaker, is they've rushed out there with a cobbled-together policy which the Shadow Treasurer says they were developing for 8 months, something he neglected to tell the Leader of the Opposition just 12 months and 9 months ago, Mr Speaker. And they've rushed out there with a policy which will ensure that 1 in 3 purchases of real estate in this country will be removed from the existing residential real estate market. They've rushed to failure on this, Mr Speaker, but by contrast, on this side of the House, what we have done is we continue to work steadfastly and consideredly through the options that are available to the government to look at the challenges that we face. And we will look at options, we will consider their impact on the economy and particularly on the markets that they may impact, and then we'll come to a considered decision. Because what we won't do, Mr Speaker, which is what they have done, and what they have done is they've cobbled together a policy on negative gearing that will punish the nurses and the paramedics and the police officers and the servicemen and women of this country and the tram drivers and the train drivers and all of those who are the predominant users of negative gearing in this country, because they think they're the problem, Mr Speaker. But we know they're the answer, because it's these investors, it's these mums and dads, it's these people who are out there working every day in our economy to make the transition of our economy a success. But those opposite, Mr Speaker, what they want to do is they want to tax them, and they want to keep taxing them, Mr Speaker, whether it's a 50% increase in capital gains tax, Mr Speaker, or it's the other higher taxes they're putting on across the board. But for only one reason do they want to continue to tax, and that is because they cannot walk away and move away, Mr Speaker, from their addiction to spending. Those opposite will spend silly, Mr Speaker, if they're given the opportunity, and to ensure that they continue to do that, they'll tax you as high as they can, and that is no way to manage the transition of our economy.